appreciate, Mike, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening, everyone, all our fans at home and here in the audience. It is the November 30th, 2021 Town of Newcastle work session. Town of Newcastle work session. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Lisa's joining us virtually, so she is here as well. All right, Jill, do you want to kick us off and get things rolling?
Sure. This evening, we are very honored to welcome our Assemblyman, Chris Burdick, who's joining us in person, in the flesh, with presentations. Welcome.
Well, thank you. And so let me come up here.
Our terrific Assemblyman, who is dedicated and is always coming by and helping us out. Thank you, Chris.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those kind words. So I'm here for a couple of reasons. And the first is to provide a bit of a report on what's been going on in Albany, what I've been doing in Albany, especially what I've been doing for the 93rd Assembly District, and more importantly, for the town of Newcastle. So I'd like to start with that, if I may, and then I'll move on to some fun things. Well, you know,
It's fun to know what you're doing for us here in Newcastle.
This is kind of fun, too. So, you know, it truly is an honor to represent Newcastle and the 93rd Assembly District, which 9 communities that go all the way up to the Putnam line, includes Newcastle, North Castle, Harrison, and about half of White Plains. And so I started, as you may know, back in January. I succeeded to David Buchwald, who represented the 93rd Assembly District so ably, but chose not to seek re-election because he sought a seat in Congress but did not prevail in the primary for that. So, you know, when I started back, it seems like a lifetime ago, but maybe now with the concerns that we have with this new variant, you know, maybe it doesn't seem that long ago that at the beginning of this year, we were really gripped in continued concerns about the pandemic. And that really remained the primary focus for the state of New York. What do you do to continue to protect the people, the residents of our state? That was our primary concern. Coupled with that was the fact that we had gone through a year which was horrific in all senses, both in terms of deaths, illnesses, and the pandemic recession that occurred as a result of that. And you folks had experienced what all levels of government had experienced, which is a precipitous plunge in revenues. And so we were also looking at a state budget that was looking pretty dire. And so then Governor Cuomo had proposed an executive budget that reflected that, and would have included drastic cuts, draconian cuts in so many areas of services and the needs of our state. Well, it's amazing how quickly things did change. Because within a couple of weeks, we had our own Chuck Schumer, who ascended to majority leader of the United States Senate, and a very short time thereafter was a new pandemic relief package. And that pandemic relief package delivered billions of dollars throughout the nation, but also to New York State. And it included there too every level of government, in addition, of course, to individuals and to businesses and so forth. So you know what? We were looking at a completely new budget. We were also looking at the fact that revenues were coming back better than we had first anticipated. And so it turned around from what long-serving members of the Assembly said, you know, Chris, boy, you're coming in at such a horrible time because this is going to be one of the worst budgets that I have seen in over 20 years. By the time the Speaker of the Assembly, Carl Hastie, gavelled closed the consideration of the budget, he said to conference, "This is one of the best budgets that I've had in over 20 years." And I'm so pleased that we were able to restore so much across the board. We were able to restore funds in healthcare, in the environment, in education, higher education, as well as public education. And so we really were able to provide for the basic needs. In addition, we had those funds that came in from Washington. But we also knew that those were one shot. And so we didn't want to say that these are for continuing programs. But instead, it set up the pandemic relief to small businesses, to renters, to homeowners, to small landlords. And so what we saw, in fact, was we saw $96 billion for healthcare services. And the biggest commitment to public education in years, with $29.1 billion in funding for general support for public schools, an increase of $3.1 billion or 12% over the previous school year. Every school district in my district had an increase. And for the Chappaqua School District, the total support level is $9,158,321, or a 12.63% increase. And for those residents in the Ossining School District, $27,061,334, or over a 21% increase, reflecting the needs of the underserved populations in that district. Importantly to our schools is that the legislation that we put in place made an unprecedented commitment to fully fund foundation aid within 3 budget cycles. State aid to the schools, of course, has an enormous effect in moderating property taxes. And so we're so pleased that we could continue that, and that is a commitment that the Hochul administration is continuing with. Now, I'd also like to talk to another section of the budget that, together with foundation aid, the Westchester County delegation to the legislature also pressed hard on, and that is funds for roads. And so we pressed for New York State Department of Transportation funding for local roads, here too helping to hold down property taxes. As you know, this resulted in funding available to Newcastle after the September 15, 2021 DOT payment. CHIPS funding is $299,283.43. Paved New York is $78,772.95. And extreme winter recovery is $67,633.43. And I'll give you this too, Jill, after I'm through. And I can assure you that we are going to continue to push for higher funding levels in the upcoming budget negotiations. $1.84 billion for funding for the environment, including $300 million for the New York State Environmental Protection Fund, and funding to put the $3 billion Restore Mother Nature Environmental Bond Act on the ballot in November 2022. Especially important to Newcastle and other northern Westchester communities, the budget includes $500 million to support New York State's clean water infrastructure, bringing the total grant funds to nearly $1 billion in that area. $2.4 billion allocated for childcare. A $1 billion relief package for small businesses, arts, entertainment, and restaurants to help them recover from the impacts of the pandemic. And it includes $865 million in grants and $139 million in tax credits. A continuation of the phase-in of the middle-class tax cut. I want to step back on this because the executive budget was going to put a pause on that. And we pushed back and we said, no, this is especially one we need to continue the middle-class tax cut. And we won on that in negotiations with the governor and his people. And that's expected to save 4.8 million New Yorkers over $2.2 billion this year alone. $2.4 billion in emergency rental assistance and help for homeowners and small landlords. $2.1 billion for the Excluded Workers Fund. And I'm very proud that New York is the first in the nation to provide a robust pandemic relief program for essential workers, primarily undocumented immigrants, who do not have access to unemployment benefits, federal stimulus funds, or other assistance. That fund provides one-time relief for any individual that has suffered a loss of work-related earnings or household income due to the pandemic and is ineligible for unemployment benefits or federal stimulus payments. I was also pleased that the budget included a number of items that I requested for the benefit of my district and for Newcastle, as well as other items that I worked with my colleagues to achieve, including a $300,000 line item in the budget for the East of Hudson Watershed Corporation to identify the most severe wastewater problems in the 18 municipal members of the corporation, which should help Newcastle as it goes forward with addressing wastewater issues. $380,000 in funding for legal services of the Hudson Valley, which includes funds to extend support services to veterans into Westchester and Putnam counties. Previously, it did not include that. During budget hearings, I asked about that, and I said, well, gee, what would it take to extend it to Westchester and Putnam? And we were able to achieve that. $1 million for the Arts Westchester, a separate line item, and that led to a grant for performances at the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center. And I should give a shout out to Tracy Stein for her leadership in bringing programs back to life following the dark days of the pandemic. And just like to say a few words about my work on the New York State Environmental Conservation Committee and key positive developments to combat the climate crisis. As a member of the commission, I voted for several key measures earlier this year, including to place on the November 22 what I had mentioned, that environmental bond referendum. And I'm especially delighted that Governor Hochul is advocating an increase from $3 billion to $4 billion in the proposed bond, aptly named Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act. Bond proceeds would provide substantial funding for water quality infrastructure, flood hazard mitigation, and protection of open space. We will need support for the bond referendum to ensure that it is adopted, and I would respectfully suggest that sometime in 2022, the town board might consider adopting a resolution urging the state legislature to move ahead with it. I was pleased to co-sponsor the constitutional amendment, which was overwhelmingly approved earlier this month by the voters, to make clean air and clean water a constitutional right of every citizen in New York. But now we need to utilize this amendment, which I see as critical to support so much as what we're doing to protect clean air and clean water in the state. I also should mention that just yesterday we had a hearing of the Environmental Conservation Committee to talk about funding to implement the the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. We had before us representatives of DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, as well as NYSERDA, and I can tell you that we are going to continue to push very hard to make sure that there is adequate funding so that we can meet the goals that are set forth in the CLCPA. I am co-sponsoring a number of bills in this area, legislature to declare a climate emergency and prohibit new fossil fuel infrastructure projects, but not repairs or maintenance of existing infrastructure. And one of the key concerns, as I mentioned, is implementation. And so I am co-sponsoring the Climate and Community Investment Act, which would raise $15 billion per year to help fund the implementation of CLCPA. I'm also working on legislation to authorize local governments in the New York City watershed to prohibit the use of herbicides, pesticides, and other toxic chemicals in the wetlands. Present state law concentrates all authority in the DEC, preempting any local control. And my legislation simply would restore home rule local control in this area. Key legislation enacted this year was passage of the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, and I should mention that I, along with several of my colleagues, pressed for the local opt-out provision, which, as you know, was included in the law. The September 1st extraordinary legislative session called by Governor Hochul to extend the eviction and foreclosure moratorium also resulted in amending the open meetings law to continue to allow virtual meetings for public bodies. That goes through January 15, and I'm working to see that it is extended in some format. Passage of legislation to protect both patients and staff alike, including requirements for minimum nursing staff in hospitals, nursing homes, and other congregate care facilities. Passage of legislation that expands early voting, makes the process for tabulating absentee ballots easier, and provide more funds to county boards of election. Passage of the Gender Recognition Act, which would ensure that government documents reflect transgender, non-binary, and intersex individuals' identities. The provisions of this bill will make it easier and safer for individuals to petition for a change in name or sex designation. I am pleased that it included a provision I sponsored at the request of Kristen Browdy, a Westchester-based attorney and co-chair of the National Trans Bar Association, to provide transgender New Yorkers born out of state a means for obtaining a corrected birth certificate. This legislation was needed as certain states will not correct the gender or name on a birth certificate without a difficult, invasive process. But now it will recognize a New York court order correcting gender and name. And my thanks for Kristen Browdy for working very closely with me to get that over the finish line. I want to mention a few things about constituent service. My office provides constituent service in a wide variety of areas. Some examples including helping to get appointments for COVID-19 vaccinations, dealing with the Department of Labor on unemployment claims, and assisting constituents in securing FEMA and other aid in the wake of Hurricane Ida. I've also been successful in securing funding for community-based organizations, including a $30,000 grant to the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center, a $40,000 grant to Neighbors Link, a $30,000 grant to the Community Center of Northern Westchester, a $30,000 grant to Girls Inc., a $30,000 grant to Friends of Karen, and a $30,000 grant to Hope's Door, as well as funding for other nonprofit organizations. Very briefly looking ahead to 2022. I spoke quite recently to the Chief of Staff of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee, who is confident that we will have a fiscally sound budget for the upcoming fiscal year, to enable us to fulfill the commitments that I mentioned, to aid to schools, to local schools, funding for local roads, increases in funding for many of the state agencies, which presently are underfunded and understaffed, including the State Education Department and the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. And as chair of the New York State Assembly Subcommittee on Employment Opportunities for People with Disabilities, I'm working with my colleagues, members of the advocacy community, and the administration on legislation to improve such opportunities. I'm also optimistic about a more collaborative spirit between the executive and the legislature. This is very good for the state, and I believe that it will lead both to a better state budget and enactment of needed legislation. And with that, I am more than happy to entertain any questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
Can I raise my hand? I had some quick question. Out of all your municipalities, how many of them opted out for the marijuana?
Great question. And not all of them are done with it, because I think that the town of Bedford is still weighing that. I'm going to put it the other way. And I think that the ones that are remaining in are White Plains and Pound Ridge, and Bedford hasn't decided. And I think that what Pound Ridge did is they did opt out from the parlors, but are allowing the retail dispensaries. That's my recollection, but I'd have to check on that. And I don't and what White Plains did, as best I know, is nothing, meaning that you stay in because you have to take affirmative action in order to opt out.
My other, it's not a question, a statement is I'd encourage you and I appreciate your effort to try to allow Zoom going forward, especially with this new variant, and we don't know what's going to happen in the immediate and long-term future. So whatever you can do to allow for that, for the safety of residents and town staff.
And I very much appreciate that because I've had a couple of conversations now with Ken Zabrowski, who chairs the Government Operations Committee. And, fortunately, we do a lot of work with Ken because he's right across the river in Rockland County. And he works very closely with the Westchester County delegation. And so I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to have something. It may be a hybrid, but I know he's working on it. And I keep reminding him of my concern. Because, Jeremy, I've heard that concern among all of the supervisors and municipalities that I represent.
Thank you.
And I have to tell you, just our experience in Newcastle has been that our residents actually have taken advantage of the virtual option, as you can see here. And we have seen an increase, a market increase in participation, especially during the pandemic, possibly because, people were done watching Tiger King, sorry. Tiger King.
Big cat.
Lion King, and we were right there. But we were pleasantly surprised by the level of participation of our community, and I think that they would really miss it at this point. I think people, it's become second nature for people to be able to tune in and actually watch the meetings while they're participating. So anything you could do to
Well, I will, and here too, a quick resolution always helps. Town board resolution.
Just to add on to that, I think that if you're talking about supporting the communities, Newcastle's been really quite fortunate in having been able to make the technological evolution to make it a seamless participation for the public and for town board members. I don't know if every community has been as successful, and maybe that's something else that the state could be helpful with.
I've seen good success, at least in my district. I think that municipalities were really anxious to be able to restore communications with their communities. And they put money into it, and they really ramped up their ability to roll it out and to provide it. And everyone I've talked to has been enthusiastic about having it in place and keeping it in place.
Yeah, I think the access that it provides to folks who, would otherwise have difficulty getting to town hall, even under normal circumstances, is phenomenal. I think in increasing participation, COVID or no COVID, and certainly supporting flexibility for town board members, I think also helps support the semi-volunteers that do this.
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you so much for all that you do. Everything that you listed there, and particularly the CHIPS funding. I specifically remember that moment when we received that money, and we were so pleasantly surprised, and it really makes a huge difference in our lives, and to the folks who also, we get to employ as far as getting the work done and just keeping the world going. So thank you so much for all that you do, Chris.
Well, thank you for your kind words. It's really my pleasure to do it. And certainly coming out of town government, from Bedford, I keenly aware of the needs of my municipalities.
Chris is also really excited to see the East of Hudson funding for the wastewater project.
Oh, yeah.
Prioritization.
And I'm, one other thing that I should mention is that I've had conversations with the local administration and governors seeking the support of members of the legislature. And so I said, well, gee, this is not a quid pro quo. However, it would be great to know who I can contact, because obviously with the new administration, a lot of changes, and you're not quite sure. You know who the people are in the agencies. That's fine. You can keep track of that. But who are the people in the governor's office that are really the point people? And so I'm actually meeting with one of the governor's team tomorrow, and that's on my list.
Good.
So, now I have one other thing, and that is that talking about grants, I was very fortunate that I was able to secure a grant for the town of Newcastle. And I will present a virtual check for $125,000. And if I might, perhaps we could have you folks, and we could take a little photo, if that's all right.
That'd be absolutely all right.
One of my constituents and one of the Newcastle residents, Nadia is here, is taking a photo.
Chris? Chris?
Yes. Hey, how are
I
you?
can't be there
I'm sorry,
today.
Lisa, did you have questions?
No, I did just want to thank you also for all you're doing for our town. And, say I'm looking forward to working with you over the next 2 years. And thank you for Zoom as well, which enabled me to participate this evening.
Well,
So
you're
I'm
very
hoping we can
welcome,
continue
Lisa,
that as well.
and I look forward to working with you and your colleagues to do everything I can for Newcastle.
Great.
So we have,
Leave giant Lisa up in the background.
Yeah, do you want to be in the background, Lisa? We can leave you up, like, looming
Sure.
over us.
we could do that.
Although, how do we know it's
Powerful us.
how do we know it's really Lisa? Gonna zip it off and there's someone else underneath?
Whatever you'd like to do, we could do it both. How's that?
Or you could even leave that there.
So here we go. And so actually, you guys should be handing it, holding it, right? So Jill, why don't you come up?
Yeah, Jill, you
And
should join
Christina,
us.
come on up. You're part of the town. Jill, come on. You're part of the, come on.
Can we take our masks off for a smile?
Oh my
Can
God.
we take our masks off for a quick
For a
smile?
quick smile. That's
I
fine.
got my booster.
Okay, on the count. You ready? All right, here we go. Count to 3, 2, and you've got 1. Thank you all.
I didn't hear it. Okay. Oh, the official photographer.
But you gotta get in the picture, so why don't you
No,
give me
no,
your
I'm
camera?
fine. I want to get everything in. It's just hard to get the town and the people. Okay, ready? 1,
Lisa, you smiling?
3. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And you keep that.
Thank you.
Oh, we keep
we
it.
can.
Thank you,
I've
Chris.
never gotten a big check
Now,
like this before.
I'm almost done. And then I can let you.
Did you explain what
What it's for.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what I am gonna do. And so let me explain what this $125,000 is gonna go towards. There's a three-fold components, three components to the project. And I wanna thank Jeremy and I wanna thank Jill Shapiro for working with me on this. And that is 1, to install a new inclusive playground in Millwood Park.
Oh, nice.
This will include site work to provide barrier-free access to the new playground. Second, also at Millwood Park, refurbishing the only 2 town tennis courts, including site work around the courts. And last, to install a new security system at the Chappaqua train station and parking lot. And so that's how the $125,000 will be deployed. And I should mention this is a state grant, and the way it works is on a reimbursement basis. But I know in talking with leadership that this is all set and that there should be no issue with it.
Thank you.
So
Let me just
I-
say, because let me just interrupt and say that there is no, it's not working. Ah, there I am. There's no Jeremy, it was all of us, town staff and my colleagues, everyone participates and makes it happen. So it's not Jeremy and Jill, although I will say more Jill than Jeremy. But thank you, but it's all of us.
Thank you, Chris.
No,
Really,
I'm
really appreciate it.
really, this is one of the great aspects of my job, is when I can give away money. So, it's really a delight to be able to do that, whether that's for municipalities or whether it's for very deserving nonprofits and other community organizations. And I do want to emphasize that I'm going to continue to work in this area, as I mentioned, to especially secure funds to continue what Newcastle is doing in terms of providing sewer service to areas of the town that need it. Now, I have
Yes.
one very important last item, and that is going back to actually when I became supervisor in Bedford, I always felt that it was appropriate to thank people for their service. Whether they were Democrats, Republicans, people I agreed with, disagreed with, they still went and gave their measure of devotion and commitment to the towns that they love. And so I would like to present citations to two outgoing members of your town board, Lori Morton and Lauren Levin. And I have gotten from the New York State Assembly citations. And I'd like to just take a moment to read them. First to Lauren Levin. Whereas it takes courage, stamina, and an overriding concern for the well-being of others, including both present and future generations, to campaign for and serve in elected office. And whereas she has devoted 2 years of dedicated service as councilwoman to the town of Newcastle, New York, drawing on her international background, economics degree from NYU, and retail career at Lord & Taylor to enrich the culture and support the small businesses of her chosen hometown. And whereas she brought a deep knowledge of Chappaqua to the town council from her experience raising 2 young children in town, volunteering and fundraising for the Chappaqua Friends Nursery School, serving as vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, and actively contributing to the Streetscape Committee's renovation of downtown Chappaqua. And whereas as councilwoman, she made it a priority to collaborate with the newly formed Council on Race and Equity by helping the group gain exposure at such venues as the Chappaqua Farmers Market and spoke forcefully at the Stop Asian Hate rally. And whereas in the midst of the pandemic, she partnered with Newcastle Media Center to launch Zoom Around Town for virtual shopping and encouraged a Shop Local, Shop Early holiday campaign, threw herself into the successful Chappaqua Sidewalk Summer Sale, created a new outdoor dining event, Supper on Center, and helped to pass a local law expanding outdoor retail and sidewalk cafes. Therefore, be it resolved that as a duly elected member of the State Assembly of New York for the 93rd Assembly District, I honor and commend Lauren Levin for her invaluable service to the town of Newcastle.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome,
I was
Lauren.
really
It's
tearing
so well deserved.
Thank
So,
you.
Let's do this.
Yes. Should
I think we can.
Oh, sure.
You don't want me in the background.
Yeah, there's Lisa again.
Good job, Lauren.
She's got rabbit ears up.
I want to get a picture of all of that stuff you said.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This
You're
is
very
such an
welcome.
honor. Thank you.
A lot of whereases.
Yeah.
And we cut it down because there was so much to say.
You're not a man of many words, though. That's,
Now, for Lori Morton, the first whereas is the same. So, whereas as Newcastle Councilwoman and acting deputy supervisor, she drew on her scientific training at Rutgers and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and her 19 years as senior scientist at Regeneron to effectively address community challenges. And whereas she brought a deep knowledge of Chappaqua and the region to the town council, from such roles as founding board member of the CCSD PTA, STEM Committee, and the Chappaqua Children's Book Festival, Westchester County Executive Director of the AHA Heart Walk, member of the Westchester Laboratories Board of Managers, volunteer on the Housing Committee of the Newcastle Master Plan and Beautification Advisory Board, founding member of the Chappaqua Friends of Hillary, board member of Up to Us, and 3 years as a district leader in the Newcastle Democratic Committee. And whereas as councilwoman, she prioritized sustainability and conservation, serving as board liaison for the Newcastle Conservation Advisory Board, the Town Beautification Advisory Board, and the Climate Smart Communities Task Force, as well as coordinator of the Newcastle Cleanup Day and advocate for the establishment of Jean Craighead Park. And whereas having led many Regeneron initiatives on diversity and inclusion, she championed official display of the Pride flag with the accompanying ceremony, the Hispanic Heritage Month resolution, and a dedicated budget line for the Newcastle Committee on Race and Equity. Therefore, be it resolved that as a duly elected member of the State Assembly of New York for the 93rd Assembly District, I honor and commend Lori Morton for her invaluable service to the town of Newcastle.
Congrats. Are we out of the picture? Are we out of the picture?
We're out of the picture, right?
Yes, ours is actually.
Are we out of the picture? See me like,
Oh,
sorry. We got more.
Thank you, thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So well deserved.
thank you, Chris. You should come more often.
I know.
It's a good thing Lisa and I are not leaving because man, those are hard act to follow.
Come anytime you want and bring a check.
Well, I certainly hope to do that. And as I mentioned, I am, given that the New York State budget does look as though it's going to be another strong budget, I'm hopeful that I'll be continuing to get the grants that can be made available to the municipalities that I represent. And hopeful I am that Newcastle will continue to be in my assembly district, since I don't know what my lines will be since we're in the middle of redistricting. So, but in any event, it really is a tremendous honor and privilege to represent Newcastle. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for your meetings, and I'm really happy to serve.
Thank you very, very much,
Very
Chris.
well.
Thank you.
Chris.
All right. I mean, it seems like a letdown after that, but we have to move forward.
No, I like the Chris Burdick show.
Yeah, I
Me
know, it's
too.
fabulous.
I mean, where are we gonna put this?
All right, Jill.
I don't know, we're gonna find a place.
Yeah.
You know what, I'll call him, I'll call him.
I want to endorse before Lisa officially takes office. All right. So
You should sign the back of it,
Yeah,
just
just sign the back
for deposit only.
For mobile deposit.
All right, what do we got going on, Jill?
Yeah.
Up to the
The
next.
next thing we've got is a discussion of the second permit and the household waiver. So if the board will recall, right now we're up for renewals.
Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Chris.
All of our parking permits are up for renewal. They expire, the current ones expire as of December 14th. So for Newcastle residents who are applying for annual parking permits, it's $500 for the permit. For the second permit in the household, it goes up to $750. And when we instituted the second in the household fee structure, it was actually to discourage the second in the household because we simply didn't have the capacity. Fast forward a pandemic and looking at our current state of our parking lot, we no longer are under a space crunch. We're hoping it's temporary, but for where it stands right now. And so we've gotten a number of requests from residents asking us whether or not we would consider waiving that $750 fee for the second permit and making all permits straight across the board for the annual permits for the residents, it's just the $500. And so I've asked Rob Deary as to whether or not the second household fee, the additional $250 calculated into his projections, he told me that did not. He basically, just pared it down and took a percentage of the monies, but didn't, calculate it in. So it's entirely up to the board. It was within your purview to charge it initially. It's within your purview to take and just change it. It's just important that the board make a decision because Christina is literally in the thick of
Right.
Yeah.
These
parking
applications.
premises, and she just needs to know what to be charging people. And for those people that we've already accepted the $750 for the second permit, if the board were to waive it, from this point going forward, we would refund the $250 differential for those that have already paid. And it was just a handful at this point, right,
Yeah, I
Christine?
think it was like 7 people
Yeah, I was
that
gonna say less
paid,
than
and we're
10.
holding the.
Over the course of the whole year.
Well, some people have
Just
paid so
started.
far, and then we're
Well, that's
holding
right,
the
that's
people
right.
that applied for the
That
second,
applied.
so we don't have to do the.
Right.
And
We just
Jill,
look
we
at
should
this
just make it clear that that doesn't mean on one permit, you can put, I think, 3
3
cars. So
cars?
it doesn't mean that it's per car, it's per permit.
Yeah.
Right, so, so it's for those households where both, where 2 members of a household would be commuting daily or would be purchasing annual permits to be able to park 2 cars at the same time.
Wait, actually, can we clarify that? I'm sorry.
Right,
So, do you get to park 2 cars at a time or you need 2 permits?
so per permit,
Yep,
$500, we allow you to park a single car. Now, it may be that you have more than 1 car in your household.
right,
So on any given day, you take your car's in the shop, you're taking your husband's car. As long as 1 car, you have permission for a single car.
got it,
It doesn't matter if it's car A, car B, or
Right,
car C.
right.
We allow up to 3 different plates, because on any given day, people's schedules may change and they may have to take a different car. So we give people that flexibility right now. This situation is when both me and my husband, or there are 2 people in our household who are commuting every day to the city. And so we need to purchase a second annual permit. The first one's $500, the second one is $750.
okay, got it. Thank you,
And so we
Jill.
would be asking the board to waive that $750 fee and just charge $500 for any number of permits, annual permits in that household.
So I support it, although, you know, in a time when we're looking for dollars and trying to get the maximum value out of that parking lot that sits mostly vacant, those are dollars we're not getting for other purposes that we certainly could use. But I think in the spirit of what everyone is going through right now, I support, as a temporary gesture at least, and we can reassess when that time comes.
Right, it would be budgetary next year, and we would see how the parking system is going. So we could suspend it for this year with the understanding that during budget time next year, we would see what the parking numbers look like and how much pre-COVID commuting habits have returned.
Right.
Jill, may I ask,
Mhm.
so the train station parking lot, there's A, B, Zone A, Zone B, right? So is there a certain time where you can park there and it's not required to have a permit, or you always have to have a permit when,
So Saturdays and Sundays and holidays is free, and
Okay.
after 6 p.m.
after 6 PM? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, I thought it was earlier, but thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, 6
Ed?
PM to 6 AM, we don't enforce, and
Okay.
certain holidays, which follow the MTA holidays.
Okay.
Lisa?
And can we draft the resolution so that it would specifically say that the fee will be $500 for the second car? Wow, I'm huge. Would be $500 for the second car for 2022
Well,
specifically, and then it would automatically revert back to the $750, and so we would have to make this a specific resolution each year, so we wouldn't forget to look at it each year.
yeah, we call this upcoming parking year starts in December, so we call that 21 to 22.
Parking
Well,
season.
right, so
Yeah.
can the resolution say, specify that we will reduce it to $500 for this current parking year, and that it reverts back to the $750 for the second car for subsequent periods unless, you know, affirmative actions taken by the board?
You can do that. As a matter of course, during our budget workshops with the department heads, one of the things we do is we review the master fee schedule, and that's actually, the parking rates are included within the master fee schedule. So when you approve the budget, you are approving the budget for, the upcoming year. But that would be something that,
Yeah.
So that-
it's fine.
So should we do it, can we do it tonight then? Or-
Yeah.
Along the same lines, when we communicate this to the public, I think that's how we should frame it.
That it's a
That this
1 year.
is, this is a 1-year measure to support flexibility with the ever-changing, workplace, for this, for this parking season.
Okay. And so, do you think we could approve that tonight, because Christina could really use some guidance and some.
Sounds good to me. I think
Yeah.
it sounds like everyone is in agreement,
Yeah, I
right?
think we're
That's
good.
great. All
Yeah,
right, well,
Lisa's
thank you.
shaking her head,
All right,
yep.
that's really
Thank you
helpful.
for bringing it up, Christina. And Joe.
Such a good team.
All right,
Okay.
administrative items?
Yep, and the other things that we've got here are administrative items. We've got adoption of minutes. We've got authorization to accept the maintenance bond for ELQ Industries. So this is a $15 million plus bond. It's actually, normally it would be for 2 years, but the project has actually been completed for quite a while. It's taken us a long time to get this punch list in final form. So it's actually going to run 1 year from October 8th, 2021. Does the board have any questions about? Okay, great. Next is authorization to purchase carpeting and laminate flooring for the rec center. The community center could certainly use it, so that'll be great. Next is authorization.
I'm sorry to interrupt. May I ask, the color of, I'm sorry to be like such a stickler about this, but the community center is a very beloved building in my family, and and a lot of folks that go there I know who very much enjoy it. But in any event, the color of the carpeting that's being purchased, is it that brown color that was in the packet?
I believe so, yes.
I think there was 2 options, right? A brown one and a gray one.
Yeah.
I
This
just
is where I
wanted to
push
double-
away and step away.
Would Bart have any openness to switching to the gray? Just because I find the brown to be a bit dated.
Yeah, Philadelphia.
I agree. I like the gray better, but then I'm not sure if the walls match.
Well, gray is pretty neutral, so that's why I just,
But I agree. I like the gray better than the brown.
All right, I will.
Bart's gonna kill me, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why they picked it. I also don't know if this was passed by the seniors or not, so I'm.
Okay.
I will ask.
If it was passed by the seniors, then I will defer to them, but if.
Yeah, you don't want to be on the end of that one.
All right.
Thank you,
Oh,
Joe.
okay.
Thank you.
We do important work, people who are watching. This is very important stuff.
It is. We just put
I
a new
noticed-
roof
I
in that
noticed there's-
building. I mean, candidly, I think that everything that we do in that building should be up to par to that new slate roof. Right?
Yeah, really.
Yes? Am I wrong?
Well, that would mean that we're not using linoleum, so.
That was-
Back up a little.
I do notice that there's a brown-gray mix among the options. Maybe there's
Yeah, I
a
wasn't, yeah, I
compromise.
wasn't sure about the coloring, but I got the feeling it was brown. I got the feeling it was the brown.
What do we got next, Jill?
All right, I know, okay, next is authorization to accept the New York State snow and ice agreement. So it's a $68,000 charge. So there are roads within our town that are owned by New York State and under the auspices under the Department of Transportation. But because they're within Newcastle, the state actually pays us to take and clear snow and ice from it. Some the state does. The state takes care of like 133, but our DPW takes care of 117 and 120. So this is the fee that the state pays us to be able to maintain the roads. And it's a $68,000 annual payment. It's actually a one-time increase of $8,601.37, which is great. And that's in addition to the CHIPS money, the Pave New York, and the Extreme New York. That is Norman Burdick referred to earlier tonight, because that CHIP and the Pave New York is a significant chunk of our paving budget. So when New York State decides that they're not in a position to pay us that money, we really feel that it means that our ability to keep up with our paving schedule is significantly increased. So that was just fabulous news.
Great.
The next two, Ed, can I bounce these off of you to explain the performance bonds for the Chapel Crossing East Village?
Sure, so there are actually essentially three things that the board's going to be asked to approve. One is the extension of a cash bond. This is for improvements down, I believe, Nick's handling this, but I believe it's
At the
for
sawmill.
improvements at the Sawmill Bolingbrook intersection.
Nice.
There, as I understand it, some conflict between DEC and DEP on other issues. That cash bond is expiring at the end of the year, so this resolution will just extend it for another 6 months.
Right.
The other two resolutions, one is a performance bond, and the other two relate to the East Village, the residential portion of the development. So with respect to the performance bonds, you have stormwater management, you have road and site improvements, you have tree replacement and tree monitoring, so you have bonds to secure all of those obligations. They're 2.5, 3.2, and $118,000 for each one of those. These are conditions of the site plan approval that was granted by the planning board. So they're satisfying three conditions by posting those performance bonds. And the other big item is sewer and water easement agreements. There are easement agreements in place. They're being amended now to incorporate the East Village development. So in the packet, it's a little hard to read, but you can actually see maps that will show, with respect to the sewer improvement, what's being added to the existing agreement. So essentially, those three things are on your agenda.
Okay, great, thank you so much.
I really don't want to digress, but very quick question, if you know the answer, Jill, you know the answer. What's the timeline we're looking at for possibly building there?
We've actually got
residences.
Sabrina, who's joining us for the thing, but I think that they're planning on moving ahead with this. I'm thinking 22, 23 is, they're hitting the floor running. And they have every intention of,
So right around the corner, all right.
right? Sabrina, is that
Yes.
true?
Oh, Sabrina.
It's a big
Hi, hello everyone.
Jeremy was just asking about the East Village and Toll Brothers construction schedule.
When do we
They're planning
expect
on
them to
building in
start?
22, right?
I think early 2022, yes.
Nice.
I think a lot of that's gonna be weather dependent. If we have a mild winter and they're able to move earth, then they will start earlier rather than later, but we're looking at, right around the corner.
And expected,
And my understanding is that they're hoping to if everything continues as planned, they will be done with construction, within 2 years.
right, thank you.
Okay, and just two last items are for administrative items. One is just the approval of the health insurance premium rates for 2022. The town offers to their employees two different medical plans, UMR and Medco. And so that's for the board's approval. And last but not least, something that's near and dear to Jeremy's heart, and that's declaration of surplus vehicles. We've got two police vehicles that are being surplused.
On your own copy.
A Ford Fusion and a Ford Interceptor, so, yeah.
Can you get the total at some point in the next
I
week or
will
so?
get the totals, yeah. Do you want annual, you want like,
Annual total, whatever.
okay, absolutely, we can do that.
Save it for your resolution someday.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Good point.
And what's a big check?
Good point, yeah.
No, Jeremy's gonna show up in a big
Yeah.
I bet it's about that
No, it's
now.
more than that, it's more than that. It's
Yeah,
definitely more than
because
Yeah, it's
I
been-
Well more than
vaguely
that.
remember,
that.
yeah.
Well more than that.
Remarkable. Okay, that's all I've got for the work session, and we're ready to move into our.
Absolutely, let's go. Anyone want to take a motion?
I move to close the work session and open the town board meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Jill, any announcements?
Just parking permits, all of them, are set to expire on December 14th. This includes annual resident, non-resident parking in the commuter lot, merchant parking, and resident meter parking. And information for all renewals is available at the town clerk's office, 238-4772, or by emailing townclerk@mynewcastle.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing for me in terms of supervisor report. Any administrators report? No administrators report. Okay, so public comment, new business, before you stand up. I do want to just bring up something Jill and I had discussed about how we were going to have people come and what protocols we were going to have with COVID, as some have said, let's loosen up, and others have said, let's tighten up, and we know that there's a new variant, relatively speaking, which gives people concern, and rightfully so, and there's been a push to have more masks, and we've actually been contacted by some residents, and I don't want to throw my wife under the bus, but even she is trying to push that we should all be wearing masks everywhere we go. So with that said, I just wanted to briefly start the conversation here, and that's something obviously you know a lot about. So by you, I mean my colleague to the right, Ms. Morton. So Lori, if you had any thoughts, not to put you on the spot, but I think that it would be helpful to share your ideas, and I just did put you on the spot.
No, that's okay, Jeremy. Certainly, I have been supportive of us having a mask requirement in public spaces, really for much of the entirety of the pandemic. And so my position on that is actually not much different than it was, let's say, 3 months ago when we were rewriting the mask ordinance to facilitate the wearing of masks in public spaces in the community. So my position on that hasn't changed. I believe we'll continue to face new variants. I also believe that we are in the rise of a new peak that will only extend during the holiday season and into the early winter. So I am supportive of us enforcing a mask requirement.
Any thoughts? Lauren, any thoughts, Lisa?
I mean, just one thing to keep in mind, I did speak with some medical professionals about this today, and they did say that, they're anticipating not just this variant, but more variants to come, and that generally as viruses like this evolve, they become less deadly, but more contagious, because it allows them to survive and not be killed off. So, I think we are gonna see it more breakthrough infections, but hopefully they will not be as severe and for people. I spoke to a number of doctors about that.
How does that influence your thoughts on the mask requirement?
I think that, Lori, and you can talk to this too. I know initially you were concerned you didn't want to have it in gyms and things like that. So have your thoughts on that changed, that now you'd want that everywhere?
So we wrote the amended mask law to not exclude fitness businesses. So that is the law that's on the books. If we are to implement an state of emergency that would implement the mask law, that requirement would be part of it. My argument at the time to exclude fitness businesses was that I was concerned that the town board would not be intrepid enough to actually implement the state of emergency because of the inconvenience to the fitness businesses. So my position on fitness businesses hasn't changed. People should wear masks in gyms. Really, the flexibility I was looking for.
You didn't want masks in gyms.
Pardon?
You didn't want masks in gyms, if I recall.
I was concerned about including it in a revised legislation because I thought that the town board would never implement the state of emergency because of pushback from the community around mask wearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted us to have a legislation that was usable.
Got it.
So
Okay.
I'll help give cover if that helps anything, but I'm leaning towards supporting a mask mandate, but not this week. I think it would be fair to put people on notice to share their thoughts before we would pass any type of I guess it's me sitting here now, but make that decision. But I think the public should opine and share their thoughts, but I am concerned, and my wife certainly has my ear on this and other things, so.
I agree. I also think we should reach out to the Westchester County Department of
Yeah,
Health and
that's
the
fair.
New York State Department of Health to see if they're thinking about instituting any requirements as well.
Lauren, any thoughts?
I think you guys covered it. I don't really have much to add. I think, to your point, Jeremy, I think that we need to take some time and see. And yeah, I think for me, because children's vaccinations were open to the 5 and up age group. It gives me great comfort that they're much more protected, especially in schools and after-school activities. And so I certainly am not of the mindset to have a knee-jerk reaction to this new variant and immediately, enact something that perhaps we don't need and may adversely impact businesses and merchants during the holiday season. And with that, a lot of the merchants in town have said, it's been nice to see people's faces. We keep the windows open. It's been easy. It's just been more relaxed. At the same time, I understand, folks are concerned about their safety and the community at large. So I think taking the time to assess this is the smart move.
Yeah. So I don't know if we have to put something formally on for discussion. Can we do that, Jill, just for next week to discuss it? And let's try to get some numbers and more information and see, as Lisa said, what the county and above is doing. But I think it's something that we really have to start talking about seriously.
I would be surprised if the county or the state was going to make any major changes.
That may be very true, but just
Yeah.
I think it's fair to just hear what they have to
I
say.
mean, the data really isn't instructive for this particular new variant and its impact in New York. The issue would just be more rising of cases. With the rising of cases, we haven't seen a robust rise in hospitalizations. So for that reason, I don't believe that, I would be surprised
Gotcha.
if further up the chain there's a policy change.
Well, that's whatever the homework may be, and I do want the public to share their thoughts too, so. All right, thank you.
Jeremy, before we move forward, that's just a good segue into one quick thing that I wanted to bring up. Because a place where masks are required, as well as vaccine cards, is the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center. And I just wanted to put out there that this week, Friday and Saturday, Friday night's the opening night for the Charlie Brown Christmas special, and for the Charlie Brown Christmas, and they are going to have some significant people attending those events, and we would love to have a full house. So tickets are still available on Ticketmaster or through the Chapac website. So bring the kids. Everybody must be masked and must show a vaccine card other than small children at the event. So I would encourage everyone to please buy tickets and get on down to Chapac.
Super, thank you. All right,
Oh, and sorry, one more thing. Wine Around Town is on Friday night from 5 to 8. So I hope you can all join us to
Well,
do
thank
some, holiday shopping as well.
did Chris say that? Did Chris say that in your?
No, well, that was when I was on the chamber.
All right, that's it for us, I guess. Unless anyone else has anything? Bueller, no? John, do you want to say something? Briefly, please?
Of course.
I think Kent had a problem coming too.
Sorry, Kent, I jumped in front of you.
I know anybody who did attend the comedy special last week. I'm not nearly so funny, and since I took off my mask, you can laugh. Anyway, I just wanted to encourage everybody to go to Chapac. It's really quite something. It's quite special, and they have a new kitchen, so you can enjoy even more resources. But it's terrific. And I just wanted to add one other thing, that we do require the vaccinations in certain cases, but those that have not been vaccinated, for whatever reason, I'm begging you, please, take it up there, and so we can all be boosters of the town in many ways, not just, and we'll take it in the arm and keep everybody healthy. I think is a really, really good thing. I also wanted to, what I really wanted to say is I wanted to say thank you to this town board, and particularly one person that has stepped in and done an awful lot with in difficult situation. I guess I'll phrase it that way. We're very encouraged, and so I wanted to say thank you for all of those retiring members, and I also want to make sure that we have some kind of a celebration for you as is appropriate. I also wanted to thank the town for putting up the holiday decorations. They were they look terrific. And anything that we can do to encourage, as I've encouraged in a prior discussion, I wanted to make sure Millwood got their share. And we want to move forward because this is one holiday or a series of holidays that we can all celebrate together. So we can light the light and decorate our homes to our heart's content. So I just wanted to thank you all for all you've done, and particularly the town staff and administration for all that they do to get things done, to appropriately handle things, and to keep on going as things move on.
Thank
I'll
you.
Sit down and
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm here for stretch.
Oh, you're here for stretch, okay. All right, no one online? Carrie?
Not right now.
All right, moving right along. Next. We have a public hearing.
We do.
Do we open to open it?
All right, so can someone open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing on adopting the New York Stretch Energy Code.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right,
Sabrina, you there?
I am here. Actually, Amanda is here, and I think Amanda was going to
Perfect.
introduce it.
Amanda is here.
Good evening, everyone. So the board may recall that on October 12th and the 20th, the board had workshops to discuss the stretch code and heard from Mike DeWine from NYSERDA, who's also on the meeting tonight. He provided a detailed overview of the stretch code. The stretch code is one cycle ahead of the existing New York State Energy Code and will replace the current energy code. The draft local law adopting the stretch code will be the Town of Newcastle Energy Code and will apply heightened energy efficiency standards to building permit applications that will be submitted on or after December 31st of this year. The town will use the prescriptive pathway, which was previously discussed by Building Inspector Tom DePole. It requires specific items to be more energy efficient, which will ensure that all construction is including substantial renovations, alterations, and additions, comply with the stretch code standards. Tonight's public hearing is required for you to adopt the proposed local law. Adoption of the stretch code would assist the town in its endeavor to continue the path towards climate resistance and resilience. And Mike DeWine, Tom DePaul, and Sabrina Charney Hull are on the Zoom tonight and are available to answer any questions.
in the simplest of terms, Amanda, is it safe to say that this is basically just a one-year jump? We're just 1 year ahead of the game.
Correct.
It's not as if we're going to implement something that's not coming. We're just beating it.
It's like an overlay. So it's like an additional overlay on the existing energy code.
All right.
And Amanda, are you seeing other municipalities adopt this and
Yeah,
getting
so
ahead of the curve?
I've actually worked with 2 other municipalities that have adopted the stretch code over the last year and a half. Actually,
2 out of how
2
many?
years now. 2 out of, I believe, at least 5 or 6 have adopted it now in the Hudson Valley region. And
5
few-
or 6 in the whole Hudson Valley region.
Correct.
No, I actually have the answer for that. If you want to let me read off your neighbors that have adopted so far,
Sure.
if I may. Town of Bedford, Town of Cortland, Village of Dobbs Ferry, Hastings on Hudson, Village of Irvington. I had to do this because I'm old and I've been like forgetting how many places have adopted. Town of Mamaroneck, did I say Marbletown? Marbletown's in process. Oh, that's okay. The city of New Rochelle, and those are the ones that actually have adopted. No, I'm sorry, Kingston, Marbletown did adopt, not too far up the river. Town of Bethel, across the river, and that's just kind of.
Not far right now.
And there's probably another dozen in process.
I mean, to me, it strikes me as a no-brainer. All you're doing is implementing this a year early. It's coming. Why not get in front of it? Why not be proactive? Why not do the right thing for the environment? You're not avoiding it. If someone's going to be putting off their work that they're going to do because of it, I don't think from what Tom described before that it was going to be so cost prohibitive, and I think Michael described it as well. So I heartily endorse it.
You know, just a little more background. It turns out that there is going to be a 2023 New York stretch code. There is also to be a new essentially stretch to zero code, which is going to have some all electric elements, and no doubt, and I don't know how much or where exactly how it's coming, but significant incentives to do that stretch to zero, which is really an all electric code, which will not be much of a step beyond this.
I hopefully you'll share that with us when you get the information.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be the first to know. We're working on those things right now. And there's new proposals, RFPs out for contractors to finish that. So that's all coming in the more kind of advanced area, plus the new base code, which will be the equivalent to the New York stretch now in another year. They're working on that as we speak.
Mike, I had a question. From your last presentation, you mentioned that one of the advantages of adoption prior to its requirement was access to incentives and rebates. Can you share a little bit more detail about that?
Yeah, I can't tell you how much exactly coming from where, because that's a bit of a moving target. As you may have heard, NYSERDA is handing a lot of the actual incentive work over to the utilities. And the utilities have incentives for, better insulation packages and better heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment. Of course, there's a big push to go all electric, and on and on. A number of the requirements that are in the New York stretch code are for higher levels of insulation and better HVAC, and of course, lighting is a slam dunk. And so builders, developers can get, and homeowners can get incentives from Con Ed for a lot of those things that will be part of the requirement for New York stretch. In addition, there are still some NYSERDA incentives for going beyond code 2 in their new construction program. And there's also existing building programs, both on the NYSERDA side and the utility side. So the difference here is that while the code that's coming up in another year or so is equivalent to this one, the difference, and some communities have said, well, why don't we just wait? Well, because you can do that stuff that's as good as the code coming in many cases, get it paid for that duration of time between now and then. Simple. And improve on already good payback periods for the improvements that are in the stretch.
Right. Does NYSERDA have, are there communication tools out there to help educate either builders or homeowners on, on where to look for rebates and how to, assess your project for eligibility?
Yeah, and it really, again, it comes down to the utilities primarily, but a couple of the NYSERDA programs as well. A good source certainly for the NYSERDA programs, would be Eleanor Peck and your Hudson Valley HVRC CEC coordinators. On the other side, on the utility side, Con Edison's got all kinds of both residential and commercial marketing, bless you, agents that will work with you and work with the stakeholders in your community on those kinds of things. So if you were to, have somebody maybe from your committee, dig into what's available and try to keep it current, or at least communicate with those outreach people at Con Ed, I'm sure you could get them in to do, do presentations for builders and developers and everybody involved. And there's an awful lot on their websites as well.
Any other questions?
Public comment?
Public comment?
Absolutely, join us.
Yeah. All right, Kent Thomas, Kathleen Lane, I'm here as a resident and as well as representing the SAB. To Laurie's point, though, Sustainable Westchester does have a lot of programs to, heat pumps and water heaters.
Can you come closer to the mic? Yeah.
Okay, and things like that residents can avail themselves of. I don't know that they directly do contractors, but.
Sorry, so Sustainable Westchester has information on their website about rebates for such things, or they have a program of their own?
Programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So I also wanted to say I like the new, more intimate surroundings here. This is very nice. Okay. So what are we talking about with New York Stretch? Well, the built environment represents about 40% of energy usage across the country. Okay. So that's what we're. Oh, better.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, good.
You can raise it.
You can raise it.
That's all right.
I
I'll
won't
try.
say who.
Take it out like you're at a concert.
I can sing?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so what's included in New York Stretch? Well, it's tighter building envelopes with better window performance, improved air barriers, more efficient lighting and controls, okay, with plumbing and heating, HVAC, new hot water supply requirements, duct systems must be in conditioned space to save on energy. There's new duct sizing, there's requirements for balanced ventilation, for heat recovery ventilation and energy recovery ventilation. Whole energy building monitoring for high performance operation, and also the installation of the back side of EV and solar installation. So having all the wiring in place, having the breakers available, having it all set so that it can be done at some point in the future, which I think is very important. So what's it going to do for us, though? It's going to save us money and energy on the long term. It's going to reduce operating costs, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improves building performance and value, creates a healthier indoor environment, improves homeowner or tenant comfort. And now, I didn't know that Tom and Mike were going to be here, so I'm stealing some of their thunder or their information from before. So as Mike said, it's one cycle ahead, or basically about a year, maybe a year and a half. And it uses standard materials. It's not like we have to, these are materials that are already available on the market. It's not like it's something that we have to wait for to be produced. And the increased cost is only 1% to 2%, which seems pretty minimal, to increase efficiencies by 11% on average. Okay, and the payback period without incentives is less than 10 years. Okay, but one of the things that you have to consider also is by delaying. So if we put this in place now, okay, a building that's built next year will have these energy improvements. So it's going to have that 11% improvement year after year after year going forward. Now, just as a point of reference, buildings last for a long time. So by having that, we can save a lot of energy over a long period of time. I used to own a Victorian that was built in 1878. Nothing was ever done to it. If in 1878 they had the codes, to improve the efficiency, it would have been 100 years of improved efficiency.
A lot.
And as Tom said at one point, he in one of the work sessions that you had, that basically the buildings that are built in Newcastle, they use most of this anyway. It's really not an additional cost for them. because they're already using the improved performance standards. And then Josh Stack, who is a colleague, I think, of Mike's, he's a consultant for NYSERDA. He's also a builder. At the New York State Conference of Association of Conservation Committees, he said that he would never build anything that wasn't up to this standard. Okay, and it's pretty well accepted. And again, as you've mentioned before, it only applies to new construction or major renovations on existing construction. Okay. And then, okay, so the other thing, which is Sabrina will appreciate here, is that it qualifies for 10 points towards the climate smart communities. Okay. In addition, with the clean energy communities, it might qualify for a $5,000 rebate or a grant, and then it also is 1,200 points towards what could be a further larger grant from the CEC. And it also reinforces Newcastle's commitment to the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act. Okay, so myself and the SAB would like to urge that the town board adopt this to reduce energy consumption, operating and utility costs, and of course, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's what I got.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kent. Great summary.
Anybody else? Anyone online? No. All right. So, Jill, what should we just hold this open for? Yeah.
Any comments? Let's hold it open until, let's see. We could do Friday at noon.
That's fine.
Okay. And then the board can consider it on their meeting on the 7th.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Was there any add-ons, or was that the last? Am I missing?
That's it. There's just a number of resolutions.
Yep.
There's a consent, sorry. Yeah, there's a number of resolutions, consent agenda items, but then there's also at least 2 separate ones.
All right. So whoever wants to take it.
Sure.
Everyone, thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, Mike.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
guys.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, all.
Thank you, Tom.
All
Thanks,
right.
Mike.
Yeah, I'm going to get dinner. Thank you all. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm sorry, just before I start, Jill, I wanted to double check the authorization to promote DPW. That's the resolution that Lauren, sent. Okay. So I move to adopt the consent agenda as submitted, consisting of the following: authorization to approve settlement, personnel, resolution accepting donation from Terra Tile, adoption of minutes, authorization to accept maintenance bond, ELQ, authorization to purchase carpeting and laminate flooring for the recreation center, authorization to accept New York State DOT snow and ice agreement, resolution authorizing acceptance of performance bonds, Chapel Crossing East Village, resolution authorizing acceptance of the sanitary sewer and water easement and maintenance agreement associated with Chapel Crossing subdivision plot, resolution authorizing modification to cash bond agreement with SG's Chappaqua B LLC, authorization to approve UMR/MEBCO health insurance premium rates for 2022, and authorization to declare surplus vehicles police.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the promotion of Michael Belmonte to the position of motor equipment operator within the Department of Public Works at the annual salary of $78,611.49, effective December 13, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that the fee for a second parking permit within the same household shall be reduced to $500 for the 2021-2022 permit year. Be it further resolved that absent further action by the town board, said parking permit fee shall revert to $750 for the 2022-2023 permit year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that's it, right?
Okay.
Okay. I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody.